The ash pattern said one thing. The husband's alibi said another. Gil had been doing this job for 19 years, and he knew, the moment he crouched in what was left of the garage, that this was not the fire the file described. Sandra Hollis had already confessed. The insurance company wanted him to confirm it, close the claim, and move on. He had done it before, but the ash pattern kept pulling him back, and the woman on the other side of the table had not looked him in the eye once. Gil Marsh worked for a firm called Sentinel Adjustment Group, which sounds like something that evaluates claims fairly and does not. His job was to find documented reasons to deny them. He was good at it, not proud of it. He had made a kind of peace with the distinction somewhere around year 11. He was 53. He drove a gray sedan, kept a thermos of black coffee in the console, and had worked 216 cases involving fire. He could tell, without instruments, whether a fire had been set. The Hollis house was a two-story colonial 40 minutes from the city. Valued at $480,000. Insured for $520,000. The fire happened on a Thursday in March, at roughly 10:30 in the evening. Sandra Hollis called 911 at 10:23. She said she had left candles burning in the living room, gone to bed, and woken to smoke. She got out through the bedroom window. The house did not survive. Her husband, Ray, had not been home. He was at a bar called Lacey's with 3 friends, and the receipt placed him there from 8:41 to 11:09 p.m. Sandra had given a voluntary statement to the fire marshal, and then a second to the insurance investigator before Gil. Both said the same thing: she was careless. She was sorry. She had no one to blame but herself. The file landed on Gil's desk on a Monday morning. The adjuster, a man named Price who called only when he wanted something resolved, said the case was straightforward. The claimant had confessed twice, voluntarily, with consistent statements. The house had been insured above its assessed value and the mortgage was in default, which gave the company grounds to pursue fraud charges if Gil's report supported it. All Gil needed to do was document his findings and move on. He drove out Tuesday morning. He expected to be done by Thursday. The garage was where it started. Not the living room, not the candles on the coffee table. The burn pattern on what remained of the walls told a story that had nothing to do with carelessness. The deepest char was on the far wall of the garage, the interior wall, the one shared with the main house. That was the origin point. That was where the fire had burned hottest and longest. The living room had burned too, but it burned after, and from the spread, not the source. Gil photographed everything and said nothing to the fire marshal's contact who had walked the site with him. He returned to his car and wrote 3 sentences in his notebook. Origin, garage, interior wall, pattern, consistent with accelerant, 2 separate points. Confession, inconsistent. He ran the financial records through a service Sentinel used. The mortgage was 14 months in arrears. The lender had issued a formal notice of default 6 weeks before the fire. 2 weeks before the fire, $12,200 had moved from the couple's joint account into a private account in Ray's name only. Not a shared account, not a bill payment, a transfer into an account Sandra could not access. He pulled Ray's background, a civil lawsuit from a former business partner in 2017, settled quietly. A dismissed criminal complaint from 2014, the complaining witness had withdrawn. Nothing else. Clean record, good credit, before the house. The kind of history that looks unremarkable unless you know what you are looking for. He pulled the 911 call logs from the Hollis address. 2 calls in 18 months. Both coded as domestic disturbance. Neither resulted in a written report. He went to see the neighbor across the street. Her name was Doris Campeau. She was 71 and had lived on that block for 40 years. She made Gil tea and told him she had heard the fire trucks and come to her window in her robe. Then she told him something else. She said she had seen Ray's truck in the driveway that night. She thought it was around 9. She wasn't certain of the time. She hadn't looked at a clock, but she was certain about the truck. She knew it by the dent in the rear panel on the driver's side. She'd seen that truck coming and going for 3 years. Gil thanked her and did not tell her what the bar receipt said. He requested security footage from neighboring properties. 2 houses had cameras. One covered only the front walk. The other, 3 doors down, had a wide-angle camera mounted above the garage that caught part of the street and a corner of the Hollis driveway. The footage was low resolution and grainy, the kind that shows movement without clarity. At 8:47 p.m., a figure entered the Hollis property through the side gate to the garage. Dark jacket, moving without hurry, which is what he noticed first, not the rush of someone afraid of being seen, but the measured pace of someone who had been there before. The figure was inside for 12 minutes. At 9:01, the same figure left through the side gate, walked to the street, and moved out of frame. At 10:23, Sandra called 911. Gil watched the footage 4 times. He could not identify the figure. He could not rule out that it was Ray. He requested a second meeting with Sandra. She was staying at a motel off the highway, the kind of place rented by the week, the parking lot full of trucks and a vending machine outside the ice room. She came to the door in the same jacket she had worn in the first interview photograph. She was calm, not calm, flat. The kind of flatness that comes from rehearsing the same story until the emotion has been worn off it like paint off a handrail. She answered every question the way she had answered before. The candles, the bedroom, the smoke, her answers were consistent because they had been practiced, and in 19 years Gil had learned that genuine memory never runs that smoothly. Real memory skips. It doubles back. It produces the wrong detail at the wrong moment and then corrects itself. What Sandra was giving him was a performance, and she had rehearsed long enough that it might have passed with someone who was not paying close attention. He asked her one question she had not been asked before. He asked where she was standing when she first noticed the smoke. She paused. 1 second, maybe 2. Then she said, "The upstairs hallway." He wrote it down and moved to the next question. She visibly relaxed. In the fire marshal's report, the upstairs hallway showed the least smoke damage of any room in the house. Someone standing there would have been among the last in the building to know there was a fire. He thought about that on the drive back. He also thought about something he had noticed in both meetings with Sandra that appeared nowhere in any statement. When he had entered her motel room and introduced himself, she had taken a half-step backward. Not away from him specifically, away from the door, a reflex she might have had every time she heard a knock. She had recovered immediately and extended her hand, but the step had happened. He had seen it. In both meetings she had also never sat fully back in her chair. Her weight stayed forward. He had seen the same posture in witnesses giving depositions in contentious cases. People who had learned that being comfortable in a room was something that could be taken from them without warning. He filed an interim report with Sentinel saying the investigation was ongoing and he needed additional time. He was given 2 weeks, reluctantly. Price called and used the word expedite twice. Gil went back to the site one more time. He stood in the burned-out garage on a cold afternoon and walked the origin point again. He had done this before on cases that resisted clarity, returned to the physical evidence to make sure he was reading it and not inventing it. He took soil samples from the base of the interior wall and sent them to an independent lab. The result came back 8 days later. Petroleum-based accelerant, consistent with charcoal lighter fluid, present in the soil at the base of the garage wall at concentrations inconsistent with incidental contamination. Sandra Hollis had described a fire that began in the living room. In neither of her statements had she mentioned the garage. He had everything he needed. He also had 2 directions he could go with it. He could write the report Sentinel had hired him to write. Fraud, evidence documented, claim denied. Sandra's confession was on record. With signed statements in hand, a referral to the district attorney would not be difficult. He had seen juries believe confessions even when the physical evidence introduced doubt, and the only genuine ambiguity in this case was whether the figure on the security footage was Ray. Not whether Sandra had started the fire, which she had not. Or he could write what the evidence actually showed. He sat in his car outside the motel for a long time before he went inside. He did not begin with a question. He sat in the chair by the window and told Sandra what the evidence showed. The origin point, the accelerant, the footage, the financial transfer, the neighbor's account of the truck, the prior calls, the inconsistency between her statement and the smoke damage pattern. He said it plainly, without accusation, the way you would read back findings to a colleague. She looked at her hands. A long time passed. Then she said, "I signed a statement." He said, "A statement isn't the same as the truth." She said, "I know what the truth is." He said, "So do I need to hear it from you." The silence that followed was not empty. It was the kind of silence where a person is deciding whether they are done protecting something that never protected them back. She said. Ray told her before it happened. Not the specifics, not the how or the when. He told her they were going to lose the house, that they were going to lose everything, and that he was going to handle it. She didn't know what that meant. She told herself she didn't want to know. And then the smoke alarm went off. She got out through the window and stood in the yard and watched the house burn. She knew. She did not call the police. She called 911, said there was a fire, and waited. When Ray arrived at the scene, his receipt said he left Lacey's at 11:09, and he arrived at 11:22. He stood beside her in the yard and did not say anything. He did not touch her. He looked at the house. He looked at her once. And she understood. She signed the first statement the following morning. The second 4 days later. The story was simple and it was hers and she had decided to keep it. Gil asked her why. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I thought I must have done something to make him this way. That if I had been different, if the finances had been different, if the marriage had been different, none of this would have happened. I thought if I just let it end, it would finally end. And I thought, she stopped. He waited. She said, I thought if I didn't sign, he would say it was me. And they would believe him. Gil filed his report on a Friday, the last day of his extension. He filed all of it, the origin point, the 2 sites of accelerant, the footage timeline, the financial transfer, the neighbor's account, the independent lab result, and the inconsistencies between Sandra's statements and the physical evidence. He noted that the confession appeared to be a false voluntary statement made to protect a third party. Price called before the report was fully processed. He used the word complication 3 times. Gil said the evidence was the evidence and he had documented it accurately. He did not hear from Price again. Ray was charged 4 months later. His bar alibi had held through the initial review, but when the 3 friends were interviewed separately by the district attorney's office, one of them gave a different account of when Ray had arrived. A gap of nearly 90 minutes that his attorney struggled to explain. The accelerant evidence did the rest. Ray's attorney argued the footage was inconclusive, and it was. He argued the neighbor was mistaken about the time, and she may have been. But the accelerant was not inconclusive. The origin point was not a matter of interpretation. The claim was paid. Gil did not follow up after that. He never did, once a file was closed. He thought about Sandra sometimes, the way you think about a few cases in a long career that don't settle where they belong. Not because they were the worst. Because they were the closest. The ones where the distance between what happened and what he filed was narrowest, where a different choice on his part would have sent everything the other way. At the end of their last conversation, as Gil picked up his thermos from the table and said he would be in touch if he needed anything further, Sandra said one thing. She was looking at the floor when she said it. She said, I just wanted someone to believe me. He had been hired, specifically, to find a reason not to. He had crouched in that garage and looked at the ash and chosen not to look away from it.